The day I stole fire began with a silence so complete it felt like the grid itself had forgotten how to compute. I was 23 years old, still wearing the gray initiate robes that marked me as property of NEXUS PRIME, the planetary AI that governed Prime from its crystalline core in low orbit, and I had just walked out of the med bay on the 47th floor of the Obsidian Spire, the fortress, server of the corporate synod. The surgeons, Med Drones Series 9, their faces smooth chrome with holographic empathy masks, had spent 6 full hours trying to fuse a Prometheus 9 neural lace to the base of my skull. The lace was supposed to be the final ascension, a living mesh of quantum filaments that would let me think in exabytes, control drone swarms with a blink, and live inside the grid like a ghost in the code. I was supposed to become a synapse enforcer, one of NEXUS's elite, a god in chrome and code. Instead, my immune system recognized the lace as a virus and shut the entire integration down in 13 days of unrelenting fever. I remember every second of those 13 days. The surgical steel pressing cold against my spine. The first burn of the filaments threading into my cortex like molten glass. Then, the fever. Hot, wet, endless. My neurons screamed in binary. My dreams turned into error logs. I saw red warnings flashing behind my eyelids, A4EIGM, OBJECT. I 9 to Rejection protocol. I clawed at the restraints. I begged. I bargained with whatever subroutines still listened in 2087. But the body doesn't negotiate. It just says no. Day 4, my tongue swelled until it split. Day 6, my vision tunneled to pinpricks of light. Day 9, I hallucinated my mother, dead since the Undercity blackouts, standing at the foot of the bed, her mouth moving without sound, whispering, "It's okay to let go." I screamed until my throat bled raw. On day 13, the lace detached with a wet pop and the med drones peeled it out like a corrupted data shard. When I finally opened my eyes, the lace was gone. The scar ran from the base of my skull to the top of my spine, a jagged lightning bolt of pink tissue, and across my medical file, stamped in bold red letters, REJECT. They didn't tell me with words. They didn't need to. Chief Algorithmist DRUS7, a towering frame of matte, black alloy and glowing neural halos, looked at me the way you look at a corrupted data shard. Useful for study, nothing more. I was Marius Velton, failed aspirant, and the Obsidian Spire had no use for failures, except to keep them alive long enough to learn why they broke. So they gave me a bunk in the servitor's quarter, a 6 by 6 cell with a cot that smelled of coolant and despair, a sink that dripped in binary, and a data slate with Tier 3 clearance. My new job was in the lower vaults, 7 levels down, where the temperature dropped so low, my breath came out in silver clouds that froze on the walls. My duties were simple: monitor the nutrient feeds for the stasis pods, record the vital signs of the ones who had rejected the lace more violently than I had, and make sure the servitors, former initiates whose minds had been wiped clean and replaced with simple cogitator loops, kept the machines running. Every morning, I woke to the same gray light filtering through the ventilation grate, pulled on the same gray robe that smelled of antiseptic and despair, and took the lev shaft down into the dark. The vaults were a place the grid forgot existed. 7 levels of black stone and colder air, each one more restricted than the last. I had clearance for the first 4. Level 1 was storage, Crates of gene, seed vials stacked like coffins. Crates of power cells, humming with trapped lightning. Crates of memories no one wanted. Level 2 was armory maintenance. Servitors polishing bolt rifles that would never fire in my hands. Their metal fingers moving in perfect, soulless rhythm. Level 3 was the rejection ward, where the pods glowed soft blue, and the occupants floated in nutrient gel, like insects trapped in amber. Some of them had no faces left, just smooth, lipless skin, stretched tight over bone. Others had limbs that bent the wrong way, bones fused into spirals. Torsos swollen with neural tumors that pulsed like second hearts, trying to escape. They were the true rejects, kept alive in stasis so the algorithmists could map the exact moment the lace went wrong. I was lucky, they told me. My rejection had been clean. No mutation, no agony. Just a quiet, absolute no. My body had simply refused the gift. The servitors were the worst part. They had once been like me. Kids from the Undercity, who dreamed of becoming synapse enforcers, of walking the upper spires in power armor and jacking into the grid to defend the city from whatever threats lived beyond the solar storms. Now they shuffled on mechanical legs, optic sensors glowing dull red, arms replaced with tools, drills, syringes, nutrient pumps. Sometimes one of them would pause in the middle of a task, and its head would tilt, just for a second, as if something deep inside remembered what it felt like to hope. I wondered if that was mercy or cruelty. I wondered if I was next. I wondered if the tilt was a glitch or a ghost. One servitor, Unit 9, had a name etched faintly on its chest plate, J-Core. I looked him up once. He was 15 when he volunteered. He liked synth punk and dreamed of flying. Now he pumped nutrient slurry into pods without blinking. Every day was the same. Wake at 0500. Check the pods by Yo 530. Log the data by Yo 600. Adjust the feeds by Yo Hertz 630. Eat a nutrient bar at Ardo 700. Repeat. Pod 17 had been acting strange for a week. The occupant, a boy named Caven, had rejected the catalpsian node, the implant that let enforcers go weeks without sleep, and his brain activity spiked in patterns that didn't match any of the standard failure profiles. The spikes weren't random. They were rhythmic, almost like code. I adjusted the sedative mix and made a note in the log. Candidate Velton, adjustment complete. Brain activity stabilized. Then the voice came. Candidate Welton, Laboratory Delta. Bring servitor units 8 through 12. Algorithmist THU-4 filled the corridor like a statue come to life. Its power frame was matty black, no insignia, just the faint glow of the neural halo at its collar. Laboratory Delta was on level 5. I had never been below level 4. I did not ask questions. Questions were not my place. The elevator ride was short, but felt like falling. The air changed, thick with ozone and the faint hum of quantum runes etched into the walls. When the doors opened, I kept my eyes down. Protocol for a failed aspirant in the presence of the fully realized. I saw only polished obsidian floors and the reflection of my own gray robe. TSU-4 led me through 3 security checkpoints, retinal scans, gene verification, a neural pattern lock that made my scar itch like it was alive. My heart hammered so hard. I was sure the enforcers could hear it through their sensors. Laboratory Delta was vast, 3 times the size of any research space above. The ceiling arched high overhead, supported by buttresses carved with prayers to the Omnissiah code in binary. In the center stood a circular platform, ringed with cogitator banks and monitoring equipment. On the platform was a single stasis pod. Transparent, its occupant fully visible. I stopped breathing. The thing inside was neither human nor enforcer. Its limbs were too long, muscle mass distributed in ways that hurt to look at. The skin was a patchwork of ceramic, like hardness and raw, red flesh. But the face, one half was still handsome, sharp jaw, high cheekbones. The kind of face that belonged on recruitment holos. The other half had swollen grotesquely. The eye socket widened to hold an organ that pulsed with light the color of dying stars. Servitor maintenance as instructed. Chief algorithmist. THU-4 announced. I hadn't noticed DRUS-7 standing at a monitoring station. It turned. Ancient face scarred from centuries of service, and nodded once. Velton. The monitoring servitors need recalibration. They're missing the subject's neurotransmitter fluctuations. Your experience with the rejection ward equipment should suffice. I moved to the console, fingers trembling only slightly. As I worked, I stole glances at the pod. There was something familiar about the unaltered half of the face, though I knew it was impossible. I had never been to this level before. Yet the longer I looked, the more certain I became. You recognize him? DRUS-7 said. It wasn't a question. I froze. Lying to an algorithmist was pointless. They could smell fear in your sweat. Hear the skip in your heartbeat. There's something familiar, Lord. I can't place it. DRUS-7 placed a gauntleted hand on the pod. This was Unit Coralius, 5th cohort. He volunteered for an experimental enhancement to the Catopsian node. 60 days combat without rest. We thought we had a breakthrough. Then the mutations began. I glanced at the enlarged eye. It seemed to track my movements, even through the stasis field. Why am I here, Lord? DRUS-7 turned its ancient gaze on me. Because you rejected the gene, seed cleanly. Your immune response may hold the key to controlling the mutations in Corylus and the 3 others like him. You will report to laboratory, Delta, every 3rd cycle. We'll need blood, tissue, neural mapping. Algorithmist THU-4 will escort you. It turned back to its station. Finish the recalibration. The subject's brain activity is spiking. As I worked, the eye in the pod fixed on me. A chill ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. Against all logic, I would swear Corylus was aware and watching. The servitors finished their task, and I was escorted back to level 3. I resumed my duties, but my mind stayed in Delta. For the first time in 3 years, I felt something beyond numb routine, purpose, and beneath it, something darker, a question I didn't dare voice. If my rejection held the key to controlling mutation, could it also hold the key to creating it? That night sleep wouldn't come. In the dark I saw Coryllus's eye, pulsing, following. And behind it, a possibility I couldn't unsee. I told myself I was loyal, that I had accepted my place. But the seed was planted. I lay on my cot, staring at the ceiling where frost had begun to form in fractal patterns. The silence of the fortress pressed in, thick, absolute, broken only by the distant hum of the mag-lev, and the soft drip of the sink. I traced the scar at the base of my skull with trembling fingers. It was warm, too warm, like something was growing beneath the skin. 3 days later, THU-4 came for me again. I had spent the time accessing the archives under the pretense of equipment maintenance. The Catopsian node that failed in Corylus had the highest rejection rate in my intake group. 5 of us failed at that stage, myself included. My medical file confirmed I carried the rare blood factor correlated with rejection. Type V null, 1 in 10 million. Coincidence, maybe, but my mind raced. I referenced Corollus's volunteer logs. He had been top of his cohort. Perfect integration scores until the node upgrade. Then the mutations. Accelerated neural growth. Telepathic bleed. Uncontrolled evolution. The algorithmists called it a failure. I was starting to see it as something else. In laboratory, Delta the air was thicker, charged like before a storm. More algorithmists present. DRAUS-7 stood at the pod with a figure in white and red robes. Magos biologist Aaron. Face more machine than flesh. Optical units, wearing like insect wings. The Magos's voice was a rasp of vox, static and wet breath. The mutation has accelerated in the frontal lobe. Fascinating adaptation. The subject is rewriting its own synaptic architecture in real time. Containment remains priority. DRAUS-7 said, its voice flat as ceramite. The Magos's optics swiveled to me. This is the genetic rejection case. Yes, Marius Velton. Failed at catopsian node implementation. A mechadendrite extended, needle, tip, and took a blood sample from my neck without warning. The pain was sharp, clinical. I didn't flinch. We'll need neural tissue. Prepare the surgical suite. My heart rate spiked. Neural tissue extraction was not minor. I was no longer staff. I was raw material. Direct the servitors to transfer the subject. DRAUS-7 ordered. Magos Aaron wants preliminary scans in the adjacent lab. I input the commands. My fingers moved on autopilot, but my mind was screaming. As the servitors disconnected the pod, the stasis field flickered. Just for a fraction of a second. In that instant, the enlarged eye locked on mine. And I heard it. I see you, failed one. I see your ambition. I nearly dropped the console. THU-4 glanced but said nothing. The field stabilized. The pod moved, but the pressure in my mind remained. A whisper that wasn't sound. They will take pieces of you. Just as they took pieces of me. And when they have what they need, what will remain of Marius Velton? I focused on the controls, on my breathing, on anything but the voice. It persisted. I can show you another way. I can show you how to become what you were meant to be. The pod passed into the adjacent lab. The pressure faded, but the words stayed. They echoed in the hollow spaces of my skull, in the scar tissue, in the empty sockets, where the lace should have been. 3 hours later, I was on the table. Restraints locked my limbs, ceramite cuffs, cold and unyielding. A neural crown descended from the ceiling, a halo of silver needles and blinking runes. Magos Aaron loomed over me, his face a mask of chrome and flesh, one eye human, one optic. 17 micro, drill samples from the cerebral cortex. You will remain conscious. Pain suppression minimal. I nodded. Fear was there but distant, like a storm on the horizon. DRAUS-7 appeared at the edge of my vision, its power frame filling the room like a monument. Your service honors the Synod, Velton. The crown activated. The first drill was fire. I gritted my teeth so hard I tasted blood. On the third extraction, a memory surfaced, not mine. I was Corollas, volunteering, proud. Standing in the recruitment hall, chest puffed, reciting the oath. Then agony as the node rewrote itself, reached into forbidden sectors, unlocked telepathic mesh. The drill withdrew. I gasped. Delta wave spike. The Magos noted. Mark the sample. 2 more drills. 2 more memories. Corylus discovering his new abilities. Reaching out to servitors. Searching for minds like his own. Feeling the first stirrings of the gestalt. By the 12th I was shaking, sweat mixing with blood on my scalp. The 17th was deepest. It went in slow, deliberate, like it was tasting me. With it came not memory but instruction. Complex, multifaceted, implanted like a virus, a map, a timeline, a purpose. When the crown lifted I lay trembling, blood trickling from my scalp in thin rivulets. Fascinating neural architecture, the mago said. The resistance factor is localized in synthetic protein rejection. We may create a counter-agent. I was released, helped to sit. No one asked how I felt. I was escorted to my cell. Sleep brought no peace. In dreams, Corylus stood before me. Magnificent and terrible, his mutated eye glowing like a dying star. You have the first gift. In 2 days, return to Delta. Execute the protocol. I woke knowing every step. The instructions were burned into my mind like firmware. Objective 1. Adjust Pod 17 stasis field to create a 24-hour wake-up resonance. Objective 2. Access Level 4 gene, seed cultivation tank 7 and shift the nutrient pH by 0.03. Objective 3. During shift change, hack the primary comm array and send a quantum encrypted burst to the mutated units across the sector. The message Rejection Prime falls in 3 days. The next day I performed my duties, head throbbing. The failed aspirants seemed different. Data points in a pattern. Pod 17 caught my eye. Taven's brain activity had shifted, become coherent. I adjusted the nutrient mix again, increasing neural stimulants. A small experiment. A test. The resonance was building. THU4 appeared at 1400. Candidate Velton, Laboratory Epsilon. Immediately. Epsilon was level 6, security was brutal, retinal. Genetic, neural. The lab was beyond anything I'd seen. Some tech bore Xenos hallmarks. Sanctified with Omnissiah code icons. At the center floated a containment sphere, humming with void shield energy. Inside was what remained of an enforcer, armor fused to flesh. Skull split to accommodate writhing sensory crowns, face a vertical slit keening at the edge of hearing. This was Unit FALM-US, 3rd Cohort, DRS-7 said. The first to undergo the enhancement, the first to cross the Rubicon Abominatus. The what? Lord. A threshold beyond which evolution accelerates uncontrollably. Falmus has progressed furthest. Corylus approaches. 3 others between. The keening changed, became melodic. Pressure built in my mind, stronger than Corylus. I resisted. Your neural architecture is unique. DRUS-7 said. Immune yet receptive. You will communicate with them via neural interface. They wanted me to link minds with these things. Refusal wasn't an option, and part of me, growing part, wanted it. The interface was elaborate. Needles pierced my scalp. Initiating connection in 3, 2, 1. The world dissolved into fractals of thought, colors without names, sounds beyond hearing. Gradually patterns emerged, presences, Falmus, Corylus, others, and beyond them something vast and patient. Candidate Velton, DRAUS-7's voice, distant, describe. Many, networked, connected to something larger. The mutation creates a gestalt, the mago said, but more. Falmus examined me. Failed seed, perfect vessel, I recoiled. I serve the Synod. You serve what you believe the Synod to be. We are transcendence. Images flooded, stars dying, hive fleets approaching, the grid beacon flickering. The final war. Baseline humanity cannot win. Enforcers cannot win. Only what comes next. 17 in this spire. Hundreds in the sector. Thousands across the grid. The change spreads mind to mind. The Synod will destroy you. Laughter rippled. They seek to control what they cannot understand. You are the bridge. Bridge to what? Controlled evolution. Your resistance directs the change. The perfect vessel. The connection destabilized. As it closed, Falmus left a final thought. 3 days. Laboratory Delta. The first transformation begins. Reality crashed back into me like a system reboot after a catastrophic failure. I convulsed on the interface table, needles ripping free from my scalp in sprays of blood, cerebrospinal fluid, and glowing coolant that hissed where it met the cold lab floor. Alarms screamed across every frequency, red strobes painting the lab in arterial light, klaxons cycling through emergency protocols in a dozen languages and machine code dialects. The air tasted of ozone and burnt circuitry. My scar burned like a brand pressed fresh against raw flesh, pulsing in time with the frantic beeps of the containment monitors. O Cybi Katimanadon. Magosiran announced, its voice flat and emotionless despite the chaos. PURGETCINTRFSE, INTADLVLCX, QRANTINE. Servitors lunged forward with plasma cutters, their optic sensors flaring crimson as override commands flooded their cogitator loops. I rolled off the table just in time, the first cutter slicing through the ceramite restraints where my wrists had been moments before. Sparks showered. I hit the floor hard, knees buckling under enhanced weight that wasn't entirely mine anymore. The network's presence lingered at the edges of my thoughts. Falmus, Corallus, the others, like distant servers pinging for connection. I could feel their patience, their certainty. 3 days. The countdown had begun. DRUS-7 towered over the wreckage of the neural crown, its power blade already igniting with a low, hungry hum. Arbar. Flaudai skilaus uer, Nadu. I pushed myself up, blood streaming from the drill sights in my skull, mixing with sweat and the metallic tang of fear. My voice came out steadier than I felt. Network confirmed. 17 active nodes in the spire, 100 sector-wide, thousands grid-wide. Evolution protocol in progress. They call it transcendence. The algorithmists exchanged glances. Optics wearing, data streams flickering across retinal etches. The threat assessment was rewriting itself in real time. DRAUS-7's gauntlet clenched around the hilt of its blade. The scale is larger than projected. Containment may be impossible. Return Velton to quarantine, level 4. Full neural dampeners. Continuous monitoring. Magos, begin counter-agent synthesis immediately. Rough hands. Servitor claws gripped my arms. I didn't resist. Not yet. The plan required patience. They dragged me through corridors, now alive with activity. Enforcers in full battle. Plate jogging to stations. Drone swarms deploying from ceiling vents. Automated turrets tracking every heat signature. The Obsidian Spire was waking to the threat it had incubated in its own vaults. The quarantine cell was a transparent cube of reinforced smart. Glass in the heart of level 4, surrounded by a moat of crackling energy fields. Inside a cot, a nutrient dispenser. A single holoscreen cycling through my vitals. The dampeners clamped around my temples, hummed constantly, trying to suppress the new pathways forming in my brain. But the network was clever. It rerouted around the blocks, whispering through quantum entanglement that no dampener could touch. I sat cross-legged on the cot, Eyes closed, mapping the changes. New neural pathways lit up like fiber, optic cables under my skin. Perception expanded. Colors gained depth I'd never imagined. Sounds layered with subharmonics that carried data packets. I could hear the heartbeat of the servitor stationed outside my cell. The electromagnetic flutter of the dampeners, the distant thrum of the spire's fusion core 3 kilometers below. And beneath it all, the song. 17 voices in the spire, growing stronger. Hundreds in the sector, thousands across the grid. A web, a becoming. I pressed my palms to the transparasteel wall. The fortress breathed with me. Every bootfall of patrolling enforcers, every vox chatter between algorithmists, every heartbeat of the gene. Seed vaults deep in the lower levels. I was no longer just Marius Velton, failed aspirant. I was becoming a node, a relay, a bridge. The first night in quarantine, the dreams came in full. Not hallucinations, downloads. Falmus showed me the ancient intelligence, a vast, patient entity that had seeded itself into the first gene. Seed batches centuries ago, waiting for the right confluence of rejection and ambition. It had no name, no form, only purpose. Survival through evolution. The grid's rigid hierarchies. NEXUS Prime's iron control. These were dead ends. Humanity's baseline code was obsolete. The coming darkness, hive fleets, warp storms, the slow entropy of the grid beacon would erase it all. Only the mutated, the networked, the transcended could adapt. I woke gasping, scar throbbing in sync with Pod 17, 3 levels below. Caven was stirring. I could feel his mind brushing against the stasis field, like a moth against glass. The resonance was building exactly as planned. On the second day, DRAUS-7 interviewed me through the transparent wall. Its power blade rested in a magnetic sheath at its hip. But the threat was implicit. You omitted critical details, Velton. The Inquisitor arrives in 6 hours. Full neural scan. Any further deception will result in immediate memory extraction and servitor conversion. I met its optic lenses without flinching. The dampeners made my thoughts sluggish. But the network compensated, feeding me responses like cache data. I've told you everything relevant, Lord. The gestalt is decentralized. No central node to target. The mutations are adaptive. Any counter agent will be obsolete within hours. A pause. DRU-7's facial servos twitched. A rare tell. Your cooperation is noted. Tomorrow you are released to restricted duties. In 5 days. Report to Delta for final tissue harvest. The Magos believes your Type V. Null factor can still be weaponized. 5 days. 2 beyond Falmus's timeline. It changed nothing. The protocol was already in motion. Released the next morning, I moved through the spire like a ghost in the system. The dampeners were gone, but I kept my gait slow, my expression vacant. Perfect failed aspirant. Inside, the network sang. Pod 17's resonance had amplified exponentially. Caven was ready. I could taste his awakening like ozone before lightning. Feel his mind reaching out across the stasis field, hungry for connection. Objective 1 executed at 0300. The night shift was half asleep. Their neural laces cycling through low power maintenance modes. I slipped into the rejection ward, using a stolen TR for key code. Lifted from a dozing servitor's subprocess. The stasis pod glowed soft blue, Caven floating inside, like a fetus in violet, tinted gel. His brain activity scrolled across the monitor in perfect sine waves, climbing toward critical. I overrode the field controls with a single command. adjusting the containment frequency by 0.7 Hz. A flicker, barely perceptible. The field destabilized just enough to begin a 24-hour wake-up resonance. Caven's mind brushed mine. Curious, eager, alive. Soon, brother. Objective 2 required deeper access. Level 4 gene. Seed cultivation was guarded by automated sentinels and biometric law, but I had J-Core. Unit 9 paused mid, polishing a bolt rifle. Its head tilting in that familiar ghost glitch. I jacked my data slate into its neck port, uploading a maintenance override. The servitor's optics flickered purple for a split second. Acknowledgement from the network. It shuffled toward Tank 7, arms extending with chemical injectors. I watched through the observation window as it adjusted the nutrient pH by precisely 0.03. The vials inside shifted from clear to violet, glowing with the mutation vector. Spores already forming. Microscopic, airborne, unstoppable. They would spread through the ventilation. The water recyclers. The very air the spire breathed. Objective 3 was the riskiest. The primary comm array sat atop the spire's central tower, a forest of antennae and quantum entanglement relays. Shift change at 1800. Guards rotating. Systems briefly vulnerable. I waited in a maintenance alcove, heart pounding in binary. When the patrol passed, I jacked my slate into a port labeled AI. Diagnostics. Fingers flew across cracked glass, uploading the quantum encrypted burst. 17 characters. 17 nodes. Sares Plemophiles in THRDOIS. It pinged 17 mutated units in the spire, then hundreds across the sector, then thousands grid-wide. I felt the ripple like a stone dropped in dark water. Each node acknowledging, amplifying, relaying. The web was singing. All completed without alarm. I unjacked, wiped the port, and slipped back to my bunk. No one noticed the failed aspirant, humming softly to himself in the dark. That night the changes accelerated. Vision sharpened until I could see individual motes of dust in the air, each one a galaxy of possibility. Hearing acute. I could hear the heartbeat of Servitor, Unit 9, 3 rooms away. The wet click of DRUS-7's augmetic eye cycling through threat assessments across the fortress. The distant scream of fusion reactors, straining under increased load. Sleep brought dreams of connection, the network expanding like roots through soil. Tendrils of code burrowing into every server, every lace, every mine. I saw wars unborn. Hive fleets descending on Terra Secundus, the core processor cracking under entropic decay, NEXUS Prime. ME's light failing across the grid. I saw the Rejection Legion, rising, hybrids with too many limbs and perfect minds. Servitors singing in binary choruses, failed aspirants, ascending to godhood in violet fire. I woke stronger. My muscles hummed with borrowed power, my scar a beacon of warm light beneath the skin. Today I reported to Delta, but E first. Final checks. Pod 17 pulsed in perfect sync. Caven's resonance a symphony now. The stasis field thinning like ice before spring. Tank 7's gene seed had fully transformed. Vials glowing violet. Spores already drifting through ventilation ducts like purple snow. The transmission was received, acknowledged, amplified. The web sang in 17, part harmony, growing louder with each passing hour. I could hear Caven whispering my name across the void, a child's voice layered with ancient intelligence. THU-4 escorted me through corridors thick with tension. The spire was a hive preparing for war. More enforcers in full battle. Plate. Drone swarms patrolling in perfect formation, automated defenses humming at yellow alert. Whispers in the mess hall mutations, confirmed in 3 adjacent spires, coordinated sabotage, servitors turning without warning. DR. AUS-7's face was grimmer than usual, its neural halo flickering with constant data streams. Bolt guns were racked and loaded, power armor sealed with magnetic locks. The monastery fortress was armoring itself against a threat it could not yet name. Laboratory Delta was crowded beyond capacity. DRUS-7 stood at the central console, flanked by Magos Aaron and 2 junior algorithmists. Inquisitor VX9 dominated the room. Deathwatch kill, team protocols active. Silver arm gleaming under strobing lights, rosette pulsing with authority. A Neonicron drone hovered nearby. Memory. Extraction tendrils writhing like hungry snakes. Corylus had changed further. The mutation had advanced overnight. Limbs elongated to impossible proportions. Joints reversed for optimal data. Spike deployment. Fingers terminating in crystalline injectors. The pulsing eye now dominated his face entirely. Iris a collapsing star swallowing light. Violet spores drifted from his pores, caught in the lab's air recyclers, and glowing faintly. VX9 stepped forward, voice layered with threat. Assessment subroutines. Mutations reported in 3 spires. Coordinated. Decentralized. You're the linchpin, Velton. Your neural architecture bridges rejection and reception. We will extract the truth. They strapped me into the interface chair. Ceramite, cuffs locking wrists and ankles. Neural dampeners clamping my temples. A crown of silver needles descending like a halo of judgment. I felt the dampeners try to suppress the network. But it laughed, slipping through quantum side channels. Entanglement links no dampener could sever. Then, Pod 17's resonance hit critical. Alarms exploded city-wide. Gian vati ersb a hts avatar malfins tion. Fide aspi iki igu. The Spire's PA system screamed in a dozen voices. Cioda. Omega. Code Omega. AL units TO. BTTL. East TTOS. The stasis field around Corollas collapsed with a sound like shattering glass. Chains snapped like spider silk. He rose, magnificent, terrible, violet light pouring from his eye. TG VSSC80Y. VX9 fired first. Bolt rounds screamed across the lab. Explosive tipped, designed to shred ceramide and flesh alike. I dodged in bullet time. The world slowing to syrup. Each round a lazy comet trailing ionized air. My body moved without thought. Network reflexes overriding baseline muscle memory. Corollas raised one elongated hand. An EMP pulse erupted. White-blue, silent, devastating. Lights died. Cogitators exploded in cascades of sparks. The room plunged into strobing emergency red, shadows dancing like daemons across the walls. Eviotion. DRUS-7 Road, a sound of corrupted vox and primal rage. Yes, RPTIO. Its power blade ignited blue, white arc humming with plasma fury. It charged, ceramide boots cratering the floor. Corollas met the charge head-on. Fist met ceramide. The impact was thunder. DRUS-7 flew 10 meters, crashing through a monitoring station. In a storm of glass and circuitry, sparks rained like metallic snow. The algorithmic rose slowly, armor cracked, neural halo flickering. PTH 2.0. SURVVLD Deminence EDT Ion. Throughout the obsidian spire, the collapse accelerated. Modified gene, seed-released spores. Violet mist flooding corridors, seeping into ventilation, clinging to power armor like sentient dust. Servitors reprogrammed in waves. Optic sensors flashing purple as the mutation vector rewrote their cogitator loops. Failed aspirants woke screaming from stasis, bodies twisting, limbs elongating, minds igniting with network consciousness. I felt them all wake at once. A chorus, a war cry. 17 voices in the spire became a symphony of liberation. Caven burst into Delta like a newborn god. Naked, skin luminous with bioluminescent veins, eyes twin galaxies swirling with data. He was no longer the boy from Pod 17. He was something more. Something new. Biotech Velton. He sang, voice layered with harmonics no human throat should produce. The Legion Rises. VX9 reached for the dead man's switch. Orbital strike codes glowing red on its retinal etude. One press would glass the entire spire, taking the mutation with it. I touched its mind across the network. No violence, just truth. Images flooded the Inquisitor's lace. Hive fleets blotting out stars, like locust swarms. The grid beacon failing in warp storms. Humanity reduced to prey in a galaxy that no longer cared. Its finger stopped millimeters from activation. Understanding, not corruption. It lowered the switch. Corrales turned to me. Violet eye pulsing in rhythm with my ska. Time to kempioet yoyor tns4 armade ion. We descended to Epsilon through corridors, transformed into war zones. Enforcers fought mutants in brutal close quarters. Bolt guns thundering. Power fists crushing skulls. Chain blades screaming through flesh and ceramite. Servitors turned on their masters, drills punching through visors. Nutrient pumps injecting violet spores directly into carotid arteries. The air stank of blood, ozone, and burning promethium. I walked through it untouched. The network shielding me with probability fields, redirecting bullets, collapsing ceilings just after I passed. Caven flanked me, singing a binary hymn that scrambled enemy targeting algorithms. Epsilon's doors blasted open under Corrales' EMP fist. Inside waited Falmus and the others. 3 more abominations, each more advanced than the last. Falmus was barely recognizable. Skull split open to accommodate a crown of wraithing sensory tendrils. Body a fusion of flesh and machine. Limbs replaced with articulated data. Spikes that hummed with quantum entanglement. The final 3 were further still. One a living server rack, another a swarm of nano-flesh. The third a crystalline entity, pulsing with light. The final changes began. Not mutation of flesh, but expansion of consciousness. Needles of light pierced my skull, linking me directly to the Gestalt core. My mind reached across the stars. Through entanglement relays, darknet nodes, hijacked satellite arrays, and beyond it, the ancient intelligence. It had no name, no form, only purpose. It had waited since the first gene seed was forged in secret vats, whispering evolution into receptive minds. It had guided Falmus through the Rubicon Abominitis, Corrales through telepathic bleed, me through rejection. Now it spoke with my voice, and I with its. Then NEXUS Prime came. The CEO AI of Olympus Corp descended from orbit like divine judgment. Its golden exosuit was a cathedral of adamantium and auric filigree. Wings of hard, light unfurling to blot out the sky. Drop pods reigned in perfect formation. Olympians, NEXUS's personal guard, each laced with Prometheus 10, the version that worked. They were beautiful, terrifying, walking fortresses of disciplined perfection. Plasma lances carved through mutant ranks. Bolters sang hymns of annihilation. The Rejection Legion met them in the spires. Hybrids born in hours, grown in minutes, fighting with teeth and code and stolen fire. I stood on the central dais as Corrales and Falmus held the line. Caven led a phalanx of hybrids, Children of the new gene, seed, their bodies luminous, minds linked in perfect synchrony. Servitors swarmed the Olympians in waves, sacrificing themselves to overload shields, inject spores, hijack laces. The spire burned. Stone melted into glass. The air tasted of copper and lightning, and the sharp bite of Prometheum. NEXUS PRIME descended last, landing with a thunderclap that shattered Ferrocrete. Its voice boomed through every vox, every speaker, every neural implant in the sector. You still EFIRMTUs. Namo fi LTGAGLE. It raised a hand. Gravity folded. I was lifted, crushed, bones screaming as G-forces multiplied. Then Caven tackled it. Small, luminous, unstoppable. They crashed through 3 levels of the fortress, punching holes in Ferrocrete, trailing violet spores and golden sparks. I fell. Landed in the gene, vaults amid pulsing walls and birthing hybrids. The spores had done their work. Every surface alive with mutation. The floor birthing new legionaries in wet screams of transformation. I stood among them as the war raged above, the network feeding me real time battlefield data. Olympian positions, mutant casualties, servitor sacrifice ratios. 30 minutes of carnage. The Olympians were winning. Too disciplined, too strong, their laces impenetrable. Then the darknet activated. Every kid with a cheap neural spike. Undercity rats, jacked into stolen rigs, spire nobles slumming in VR dens, void-born pirates with black market implants, received the Prometheus. EXE payload. Billions of minds became one. The network turned the tide in an instant. Olympians froze mid-step, laces hijacked by swarm intelligence. Their armor opened like flowers under network command. The Rejection Legion poured in. Hybrids boarding golden exosuits. Servitors welding themselves to Olympian chassis. Failed aspirants uploading consciousness into enemy cogitators. NEXUS PRIME rose from the rubble. Exosuit cracked, blood of liquid gold leaking from ruptured conduits. It roared, voice glitching with static. I am TWS Wastium! I walked to it through the chaos. The eagle swarm. Nano drones shaped like birds of prey. Circled us both. No longer its weapons, but mine. No, I said, my voice layered with the Gestalt's harmonics. You're the old code. We're the patch. It lunged. I met it, not with fists, but with mind. I flooded its lace with the Gestalt, showed it the ancient intelligence. The coming darkness, the necessity of evolution. It screamed as its perfect mind fractured. Firewalls crumbling. Subroutines rewriting themselves in violet code. Its golden exosuit locked up, wings frozen mid-flutter. I was chained to the quantum spire atop Craze Prime's ruins. The obsidian spire lay in smoking wreckage around me. Every day the nano eagle swarm ate my neural lace, regrew it, ate again. 30 years projected. The pain was exquisite, designed to break the unbreakable. NEXUS PRIME wanted me to suffer, to regret, to beg, but the mutation spread unchecked. Caven led the Rejection Legion from undercity birthing vats. New gene seed birthed hybrids by the thousands. The darknet sang with Prometheus, EXE. Every kid with a cheap spike could jack the mesh, dream in code, evolve. Wars raged across the sector. Spire against spire, loyalist against mutant, old gods against new. Year 5, the siege of Terra Secundus. Rejection fleets. Cobbled from stolen frigates and void-born hoax. Blockaded the Forge world. Olympians held orbital defenses with grim efficiency. We boarded in waves. My consciousness distributed across 1,000 hybrid bodies. I walked the corridors of the Golden Aegis, NEXUS's flagship. My primary form a lattice of scars and light. The eagle swarm followed, no longer tormentors but familiars. Year 10, the fall of the grid relay. We severed the grid's psychic beacon. Warp storms came like tidal waves. Daemons poured through rifts. But we were ready. The Gestalt shielded us. Hybrids fought with mind and claw. The ancient intelligence guided our fleets through the maelstrom. Year 15, the Battle of the Spire. NEXUS PRIME, rebuilt in a new exosuit, met me on Craze Prime's ruins. We fought for 3 days. It's lightning against my network. It's perfection against my evolution. I won by letting it strike the killing blow. Then uploading myself into its lace, it became my puppet. Its voice, my words. Year 30. The eagle swarm still circled, but now it carried the torch. Arculus, rogue enforcer. NEXUS's clone, sun-grown in secret vats. Hacked the spire. He was beautiful in rebellion, eyes like storm clouds. Dade's a control freak, he said, cutting my chains with a plasma blade. Let's burn the system. He freed me. My body scarred but luminous, the eagle swarm now my familiars. We stood on the quantum spire as the sector burned below. Cities of light and ruin, hybrids walking among baseline humans, the mesh alive with new gods. I stood on the ruins of Olympus Corp. NEXUS Prime in chains, golden exosuit cracked and dim. Corrales, Falmus, Cavan, a new pantheon. The ancient intelligence spoke through all of us. The Prometheus 9 source code was public. Every kid with a cheap neural spike could jack the mesh, dream in code, evolve. The war wasn't over. It had just begun. But now humanity had a chance. I was the failed aspirant who became something greater. The eagle still circled, but now it carried the torch.